When you're tracking larger animals, it's generally a lot easier to determine what species it is. But as you go smaller, especially when dealing with rodents, you might just have to classify, okay, this is in the squirrel family, or I think this is in like the mouse or the vole type of family. And then just look for a different sign and then try to determine from that. If you're not looking for a lost person or a fugitive, something very important like that, it's okay to generalize and just say this is probably it or this is possibly it, because no one's life is at stake. So this doesn't apply to search and rescue and real world things like that. But when you're learning how to track animals, it's okay to guess. That's how you learn, is guesswork. So today I'm out at a state park and there's a fallen tree that has a lot of moss growing on it. Generally, stuff like that, squirrels and other rodents like to run across or sit on it and eat acorns and other nuts, and just kind of hang out. And a lot of times too, they'll leave scratch marks, maybe some hair. And so because it's in moss, it doesn't leave too good of tracks. And especially it rained pretty hard this morning, so any sort of easier sign that would have been left, the rain pretty much got rid of a lot of that. It's kind of like words written on a chalkboard and someone just takes an eraser and erases most of that. That's usually what the rain does to tracks and mud and dirt and sand and such for the most part, but you're still left with some sign. This log is right alongside a trail, so I also have to factor in the possibility that it could be human disturbance, or if somebody's walking their dog, maybe the dog's scratched. I'm going to look for any sort of disturbance. Animals, just like people, they have their routines and they're going to use the same trails. The rodents are no different. You can see there's compressed moss. And when you're dealing with trees and fallen logs, you're looking for any sort of scratch mark, any sort of bit of moss that's been rubbed off. Rodents like to find places that will provide cover and concealment. Here you can see a hole in the log, and so this will help rule out larger animals, like a raccoon's not going to fit in there. You can see some disturbance here. Bits of chewed up acorn. These are small rodent droppings, so I'm guessing this is a chipmunk. Now a squirrel can run across the top of the log, a raccoon can walk across the log, and a possum as well. But at the end there where there's the hole, you can kind of rule out larger animals. As we continue down the log, we look for other disturbance. And a lot of times animals will run in both directions. You can see claw marks there. You can see there's some disturbance in the bark from tiny little claw marks. And you just continue looking for more sign. There's more disturbance on the bark. And I'm going to look for scat, hair, different pieces of food that they've chewed up. And as we continue down, part of the bark was knocked off. And here it is here. Bits of moss compressed. And this section's been worn down pretty good. And then here's some freshly kicked up moss. And here's an acorn that wasn't chewed up. And so we look around. Was this a feeding area and the animal was just spooked? Or is this just a traveling area? I don't see any other bits of nuts that were chewed up. So whatever was carrying this was probably just spooked. And there's also the possibility that it just fell naturally because there's a big oak tree up here. There's more bark disturbance. And there's bird manure. So this log is utilized by a number of different animals. And then here you can see a bit of a better track pattern. A bit more of a spread. And some claw marks. So this is showing up really nice. And so you'll just take your measurements, either eyeball them or if you have a ruler or some tape, look at that. And as we continue to move down, there's more. So a lot of times if you come to a log that you see scratch marks, another animal sign, if you keep following it, there eventually comes a point where, because of the angle of the log where the animal has to grip it, the shape of its claw marks will show up, and then it'll help you identify what it is. So judging from the spread of the claws, I'd say this is a squirrel. Do we have any other sign below that? Here's some hickory nuts that it left. And it didn't eat that one, so my guess is it was spooked away. Here it was chewing on this one. Here's some more signs showing that nuts were chewed on. There's an abundance of hickory nuts through this section as well. And that's another factor that you can use on determining what kind of animal it is. All sorts of sign through here showing squirrel activity. My guess is that it's both squirrel and chipmunk activity there, with the chipmunk being further up towards the base of the log and then both of them moving down. If it was a squirrel, what kind? Gray squirrel, fox squirrel. If it's a place that you go to on a regular basis, there's one of two things you can do. You can set a trail camera out, and then when it picks up the pictures, without a doubt, you'll know what kind it is. Or what I would recommend is you find a place with some dirt and you kind of brush it off, smooth it with your hand, make a track trap, a small one, and then come back and see what kind of tracks were left. Maybe it is both. And then just look at your field guide, find yourself a field guide that has some good drawings and good pictures, and then narrow it down from there. That's what's going to teach you the best, is whenever you have to problem solve, you have to narrow things down and do a bit of guesswork. Maybe you can do both. Maybe you can set the track trap, see what you think it is, and don't check the trail camera until, after you check your track trap. When you track small animals on hard surfaces such as logs and trees, what that does is it teaches you how to look for claw marks and other disturbances instead of just a perfect track imprint like in sand and like in mud. Because sand and mud is great when you're trying to learn how to interpret tracks, but it can be a crutch if you're using that and looking for just the perfect shape imprint every time. Because as you could see on that log, sometimes there was just claw marks and worn down moss, other little sign like that that you have to go off of. But tracking squirrels and rodents and other small animals, how's that going to help me tracking humans? Well, as the great Patches O'Houlihan said, you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. So if you can track a rodent, you can track a man.